Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the July 7th meeting of Monologues.
Okay, let's start with some fun today. Carol Burgess brought our god baby Pippa with her today.
Those of you who saw Golden, the theme of Golden was age is just a number. And I happen to be very fond of Lewis Carroll's You Are Old, Father William from Alice in Wonderland. And you may not remember it, but it really has the same theme. Age is just a number. Yes.
It's okay.
You are old, Father William, the young man said, and your hair has become very white. And yet you incessantly stand on your head. Do you think at your age it's quite right? In my youth, Father William replied to his son, I feared it might injure my brain. But now that I'm perfectly sure I have none, I do it again and again. You are old, said the youth, as I mentioned before, and have grown most uncommonly fat. Yet you turned a back somersault in at the door. Pray, what is the reason for that? In my youth, said the sage, as he shook his gray locks, I kept all my limbs very supple. By the use of this ointment, 1 shilling the box. Allow me to sell you a couple? You are old, said the youth, and your jaws are too weak for anything tougher than suet. But you finished the goose with the bones and the beak. Pray, how did you manage to do it? In my youth, said his father, I took to the law and argued each case with my wife. And the muscular strength which it gave to my jaw has lasted the rest of my life. You are old, said the youth. One would hardly suppose that your eye was as steady as ever. Yet you balanced an eel on the end of your nose. What made you so awfully clever? I've answered 3 questions, and that is enough, said his father. Don't give yourself airs. Do you think I can listen all day to this stuff? Be off, or I'll kick you downstairs.
Thank you. Debby Eisenman, sorry, I missed a line. How could I do that?
I decided 5 minutes ago what I was going to talk about. I wish me well. With all the thunderstorms we've had, I got thinking about lightning. And I have great respect for lightning. I was nearly killed by it. It couldn't have been closer. My husband and I were sitting about 11 o'clock at night watching the late news, and we heard thunder in the outside, and it wasn't very loud. And Bob said to me, well, we'll wait till it gets closer. Well, it got closer. It hit a tree, came in, and our unit had not been properly grounded. So part of it went down in the cellar where we had a all-purpose room. The rest, we were sitting on the sofa. It traveled along the back of the sofa. If I had had my arm up there, I wouldn't be here to tell you this.
Oh, no, that's wow.
What it did, then it hit the stereo, and it zigzagged across to our sliding doors. And behind the sofa, we found out later, were psychedelic colors, reds and purples. And when it hit, I thought it was a nuclear holocaust. It was sound, light, everything else. And then in a tiny voice, I said, Bob, are you all right? And he said, I'm fine. Well, in the kitchen, there was half power. And we called 911, of course. And it was a new complex. There were no street signs. And Bob could hear the fire engine going around. And so he had to go out with a flashlight.
Oh, right.
But with the strikes we had last week, I wanted to look up some facts about lightning. And there's a website, Fact of the Day, and it's very interesting. Lightning storms help plants grow.
Thank you.
The air is 78% nitrogen, and nitrogen is one of the most crucial elements in helping plants grow. The molecule is a central component of photosynthesis. It's part of the chlorophyll molecule, and without it, plants turn yellow and sickly. However, nitrogen gas in the air isn't ready-made for plants to use, and its strong chemical bond doesn't dissolve easily in rainwater. When lightning strikes, however, its immense power separates the chemical bond, and free nitrogen atoms combine with oxygen to form nitrates. Unlike nitrogen gas, nitrates dissolve easily in rainwater and help keep plants happy and healthy. Legend has it that Nikola Tesla, known for his work on electricity, was born during a lightning storm. Few people's names are as intimately intertwined with electricity, and now electric cars, as Nikola Tesla's. Although well known for his impressive batting average when it comes to futuristic predictions, he foresaw the advent of mobile phones, Wi-Fi, and drones. The Serbian-American inventor is also famous for his contributions to the development of alternating current, the electric system that powers all our gadgets today. I've lost my... But according to family legend, Tesla's world-changing work in the field of electrical engineering wasn't just chance. It was a fate divined at the very moment of his birth. In the mid-19th century, the small town of Semiljan was located in the Austrian Empire. Although Tesla's family is ethnically Serbian, Semiljan resides in modern-day Croatia. Both Serbia and Croatia now honor the famous inventor with statues and museums. The story goes that on the night of July 9th through 10th, 1856, an electrical storm was brewing overhead when Tesla was born right at the stroke of midnight. An epic origin story that has more in common with Greek mythology than sober scientific history. The legend goes on to note that the midwife who delivered the infant saw the lightning as an omen, saying Tesla would be a child of darkness. But Tesla's mother, Georgeann Colin, defended her son, saying, no, he will be a child of light. It's impossible to know if these words were actually uttered, however. The lightning storm itself is also a bit of a mystery, as weather records of rural Croatia in 1856 are spotty at best. But the story does illustrate the extraordinary life of a man who went on to captivate the world with his electrifying inventions. Here are some trivial facts. The year Nikola Tesla was on the cover of Time magazine was 1931. The length in miles of the longest lightning flash recorded in the southern U.S. on April 29, 2020 was 477 miles. The number of Tesla electric vehicles delivered in 2021 were 936,172. The degrees Fahrenheit that lightning superheats the air is 5 times hotter than the sun's surface.
Wow.
And I think that's all there is.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you very much. Now, Vic Walton, who is the gentleman who, a few years back, willed Bob and I monologues.
I couldn't decide, so I'm going to do both. The first one's called "Don't Be Too Sure." These are essays that I've written. Okay, that's the way I kill time, is to write essays, and so I've been doing a lot of that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. The first one is called "Don't Be Too Sure." As a little kid, I got taught by my family, my friends, my community, the necessary lessons for living in a society and a culture that I was born into and expected to live in. I could well have been born in some other culture, like one with a religious focus on Buddhism, or Islam, or Judaism, or Hinduism, or some other belief system. The form of government or the economic system of my birth may well have been socialism, communism, fascism, or some other dominant philosophy, economic system, or approach to managing a society. So the lessons that as a kid I learned about were how to behave, and what is right and what is not right come in a variety of packages. My childhood pals and I concluded that it's okay to break the law or the rule if it doesn't hurt anybody or help somebody. Nearly everyone violates traffic laws. People cover for each other when an alibi is needed. Early on, I learned that it's okay to lie. Well, maybe just to fib, or maybe to tell a little white lie, to protect myself or my family, a friend, or an organization I'm supposed to be loyal to. I'll go to bat for you and protect your reputation, interests, and image, because I know that you would do the same for me. Question: which rights take precedent over others? For example, what might guide you if you must choose between your beliefs in the Ten Commandments and your belief in the United States Constitution, or your belief in capitalism? Which individuals or groups or organizations should be protected? Here they see.
They're coming for you.
Which individuals, groups, or organizations should have priority and privilege over others? Which individuals or groups or organizations are at the top of your list? Who gets to decide what constitutes right and wrong behavior in the first place? The Supreme Court? Your parents? A leader of your religious group? Your peer group? A judge? Your therapist? Your gang? A guru? Who decides? I've heard that whoever or whatever institution has the power, by whatever means, to influence and control others gets to decide what's right. Or does it? Agreeing on a universal standard of behavior that benefits human beings so that we don't destroy each other doesn't seem to be within reach these days. Everyone is everyone else's throat. Hey, this isn't so easy. What's right if we intend to survive? And how do we get other people on board? That's a tough one. One that people don't even really want to deal with. That's the first one. The second one is called bridges. There are reported over 600,000 bridges in the United States. I have crossed over bridges all over this country. But the bridge that gets my #1 vote is the one-way bridge in Southbury, Connecticut. It is a busy one-lane bridge about the length of a half of a football field, which links two sections of our town. There are two prominent signs at each end of the bridge to alert motorists to the usual driving situations. One is a large sign that's red and white and says stop. The other states the basic rules for crossing the bridge. It reads alternate feed, 4-car max. A reasonable interpretation of that sign would be that if you find yourself in a line of 8 cars at the stop sign, the first 4 cars would be allowed to cross. The 5th and 6th cars would then move up and patiently wait their turn. They become the next group of 4. Usually cars maneuver this way back and forth across that bridge all day long. While it may be of interest in itself, there is more to this story. Until you arrive at the stop sign, you are unsure what the situation might be that awaits you. The variety of misunderstandings that this driving situation produces is simply amazing. Until I commenced my story of life at the one-way bridge, I had not realized how many people have apparently forgotten how to count to 4. They have illusions that 5 or 6 is 4. In general, they are the same people who lack the reading skills of the word stop. Stop seems to be simply a word that has a very clear meaning to me. But it doesn't mean does it mean that each car in the group of 4 must stop or proceed as the authorized group across the bridge? Opinions vary on that. To survive to survive, new arrivals at Heritage Village must quickly learn that rules that the residents have decided that they own the roads. Residents of Heritage Village decide that they own these roads in the village and that they have earned the right to be non-stoppers. This seems particularly true of the one-way bridge. On one occasion, I was stopped awaiting my turn to cross. A zippy little black Porsche suddenly pulled up behind me, stopped briefly, honked, flashed lights, and then abruptly gunned it around me and sped across the bridge, causing the 4 cars on the other side to put on their brakes. Perhaps the driver was late for a tea time, or was having trouble with his bowels. I call people suffering from this mental disorder jackrabbits. We also have the ultra-considerates. This problem occurs when 2 of these drivers arrive at the stop sign at both ends of the bridge at the same moment. They stop and remain stopped, expecting the other person at the opposite end of the bridge to assume the right-of-way. They begin to flash their lights to signal that their readiness to allow the other driver to proceed. Being ultra-considerate, both wait. Nothing happens. Then each believes that they have been given the permission to cross, and both pull forward for approximately 5 feet before realizing that the other driver has started out as well. Brakes are applied and the game begins anew. Soon, one of them assumes the dominant role and proceeds to cross. Arriving at the other side, the privileged driver slows down, in order to acknowledge the kindness of the waiting driver with a smile and a hand wave, sort of a celebration of their mutual good manners. The one-way bridge is a virtual mecca for those who embrace a conflict memory as a legitimate and rewarding style of interacting with others. These rare situations involve boneheaded individuals who have no intention of backing down from any disputed encounter. I'll call them grumpies. They allow ordinary driving issues to deteriorate into mild road rage, followed by the escalation into a potentially violent confrontation. Here is how this happens. Two grumpies approach the stop sign at approximately at the ends of the bridge. They lightly touch their brakes, ignoring the stop sign, and proceed onto the bridge. It's a bit like the jousting match at the Renaissance Fair. Their automobiles meet in the middle. They reluctantly stop. There is an exchange of well-known and commonly used hand signals, and sometimes a finger signal. That is nearly always accompanied by a rapid exchange of explosive, colorful words that can be interpreted as insisting that the other driver back off the bridge and allow the rightful driver to pass. This is, of course, a truly humiliating experience for whoever backs down, and usually moves to the whole situation up one notch. I won't belabor this scenario too much longer, but I think you can appreciate the rich contribution that that little one-way bridge adds to the spice of life here in the village. As far as I am concerned, the little one-way bridge across the Monlogues River in Southbury, Connecticut provides me with enough adventure and entertainment to last me a lifetime.
Oh boy, that's one of our favorites, we think. Okay, Charlie, you're please.
In any event, the one-way bridge, apart from my own talk, rest her soul, Hortense she's on the honor roll, and that was her favorite subject, the one-way bridge, crossing it. She had a hilarious routine written down and performed, and she was a member of a long member of the theater guild here, and that just reminded me of the one-way bridge. Hope we all had a interesting and a productive 4th of July. How many here have been to Gettysburg?
Oh yeah.
Oh, there you go. So I'm not going to talk about the full battle. 20 years ago I spoke in this very room. An hour and 20 minutes I spoke, without notes and table displays and journals and everything else. But I've been a Civil War scholar, so to speak, for almost 80 years, from childhood. I couldn't figure out, well, during the Second World War, when we were fighting the enemy and Americans were dying, how two sides in this country killed each other in enormous conflicts, and also the numbers are staggering. In recent years, in the last 25 years, they've updated the death toll because so many records were lost, burned, and everything else. The total casualty rate during the Civil War, total North and South, was limited at 160,000. Enormous. 25 years, in this past 25 years, it's been updated with different records, cemeteries, towns that no longer exist, historical records. 750,000.
Wow.
Death. Plus 80,000 civilians, and over 1 million horses, cattle, mules, and just the ones that pull the equipment in an area. If you look on YouTube this particular week, there's about 24 different stories, all about from the journals and all of the Civil War by rangers taking on people on different tours. You get the flavor of the battles and all, but they're trying to entertain at the same time. So a lot of the things are lost in history that could come from the rangers. The spokesman for the park. I've been a Civil War Roundtable member in the Housatonic Civil War Roundtable based in Shelton for 35 years, a charter member. I've spoken to Civil War societies and all, and it's a fascinating thing. It's a tragic thing that happened to our country, divided. On the morning of July 4th, 1863, The remnants of the battlefield were all shattered, and the defeat of Robert E. Lee and the Army of Northern Virginia had taken place. Tragic events. I'm not going to get too much involved with the battle because my time is limited. It's a 3-day event, and in any event, the history that goes with that, why? All questions were asked about Robert E. Lee and also Gordon Meade. In fact, Abraham Lincoln was criticizing the victor, Gordon Meade, why he didn't pursue and defeat General Robert E. Lee, because on the 4th of July, there was a terrible rainstorm. It was torrential rains, creeks were overflowing. It was pointless to even set the Union against the defeated and retreating Confederates. Questions are asked about Robert E. Lee's engagement and why did he pick the town of Gettysburg? Well, there are several reasons, and this is misinformation. He didn't pick it. It was a chance occurrence when the Union just happened to be in the area coming up from Maryland, and Robert E. Lee had a campaign scheduled for Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, not Gettysburg. Gettysburg was an accident that shouldn't have happened. The leader of it was a 17-mile convoy and trail going back well into Maryland, Robert E. Lee, 17 miles of the Confederate forces. When they used the Appalachian Mountains as a cover, neither army knew where the other army was, and the chance occurrence happened at Gettysburg. When General Heth, who commanded the leadership of the Confederate forces, emerged from the Appalachian Mountains, he came to a fork in the road. And like Yogi Berra says, when you reach a fork in the road, you take it. Instead of going left, which would have been to Harrisburg, he went right to Gettysburg. He was told under strict orders by Robert E. Lee, this is General Heth, do not engage the enemy until we get to Harrisburg. His plans were this. In Harrisburg, he wanted to surround Harrisburg and lay siege to it. Some of the wise town fathers in Gettysburg had already issued orders to dig trenches, cut down trees, build blockades, arm yourselves, because the rebels are coming to Harrisburg. And surely that was Lee's intention. He wanted to surround the Harrisburg and lay siege to the capital, cut off the bridges, establish a campaign of fear and terror, just like Sherman and Sheridan did in the South. He wanted to live off the land. He wanted to throw the fear of God into Philadelphia, New York City, and Baltimore. That was his plan. It never materialized. So this was a spot of the movement. He had planned so many brilliant battles with Stonewall Jackson. In fact, Chancellorsville, that had some bearing on, and Brandy Station, they both had a significant impact on the battle to be fought at Gettysburg 2 months later. Chancellorsville, the greatest victory for Robert E. Lee. He and Stonewall Jackson were outnumbered 2.5, almost 3 to 1, backs to the river, no reserves, the exhausted troops, and Joe Hooker, the general for the Union forces, made a statement for the papers. He says, "May God have mercy on Robert E. Lee and the Confederacy, because I will have none." It was a humiliating defeat for the Union. His prize battle, he and Stonewall Jackson. Jackson was killed at the Battle of Chancellorsville. If Jackson had been at Gettysburg, there would have been an effect. Lee would have been talked out of the suicidal march of Pickett's charge, or Pickett's walk, you should say, a march, that resulted in an ultimate defeat. There was other reasons that Lee wanted to invade the North, not to just spread terror and fear, but he also wanted the state of Maryland to secede. Right from the beginning of the Confederacy, if they had Maryland secede from the Union and occupied by Confederate troops, they would have formed a ring around Washington, and Washington would have collapsed. Never materialized. The day following the 3 days of campaigns was a horrible day. Talk about lightning and thunder. The roads and trails were flooded, and that's one of the reasons that they never pursued the Confederates down south. There was an interesting story that I read, and I went over to East Cemetery Ridge in Gettysburg. In fact, I spoke with the librarian, chief librarian, and he was the head of the Civil War Roundtable at Gettysburg. But the society is in Harrisburg. In any event, he asked me why I had come over to this side of the battlefield. I says, because I read a very interesting thing. You never hear about George Armstrong Custer in the Battle of Gettysburg. He played a real important role. Jeb Stuart, the Confederate commander of the cavalry, had run wild against the Union. He had encircled McClellan's forces time and time again, picked them apart, stole supplies, burned wagons, and he was having a field day. In fact, he was a showboat of the Confederacy. He would go into battle and he would open his jacket, and his jacket would be sewn with a brilliant red color. Flaming red. He wanted to go on the battlefield, open his jacket, and let the Union folks know that he was the target. He didn't fear anybody. Well, he was defeated at the Battle of Brandy Station. That was 1 month before Gettysburg. And he was humiliated, and Robert E. Lee lost a lot of confidence in him. So when he approached Gettysburg earlier, he rode around, and he instead of gathering vital information, he went to Hanover and destroyed part of that, Chambersburg, York. He burned barracks, Union barracks, north of Gettysburg, and he failed to keep up intelligence. Lee was working blindly. He had no idea where the Union forces were. And this is one of the major reasons that they lost the war. The battle, I should say, which was before the war. And before the war ended, I should say. And in any event, the defeat of Robert E. Lee was a significant event based in Gettysburg. I'll tell you a couple of different stories. Time up?
No, okay. Finish it, sorry.
Finish up.
I'll finish up. Two interesting stories. One, a woman in her 80s, resident of Gettysburg was evacuated. A woman in her 80s was how shall I say, she couldn't get out of the abandoned city of Gettysburg, the town of Gettysburg. And a rebel soldier with a red beard, they said, and he rifle butt, he bangs on the door, he demanded entrance, wanted to examine for runaways. The Union troops were in panic. And she says, I'm a Christian lady and I'm handicapped, and please don't enter my house. I'm going to have a heart attack. He looked at her right in the eye, and he turned around and he walked away. And she closes the door and she puts it back on the door and she says, "Thank you, Lord, for this lie that I've told." She had 11 Union soldiers in her attic protecting her.
Wow.
True story, and I could go on and on. But in any event, it was a significant loss. Robert E. Lee had a heart attack at Chancellorsville, and the Confederate High Command, they had no confidence in him. He gave confusing orders on the battlefield and supplies, and they said, "Why in the world you're going to march 17,000 men into the jaws of death and lose?" He never had an answer for that. He thought he was doing right, but he was a little confused at the Battle of Gettysburg. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'd like to announce Robert Powell. Anyway, our next speaker is Georgeann. Please, would you like to introduce your guest?
Now, I don't want to bore you, but I don't know how many people were here a few months ago when I read a story I wrote called "Can Turkeys Fly?" Do anybody remember that? Would you mind? I don't mind or not that long.
Go ahead.
Because it's a prelude to another story I wrote. Can Turkeys Fly? Last year I decided to join an art painting class at the senior center. It was going to meet once a month, and there was no charge, and all the supplies were free, given out at the beginning of the class. The teacher decides the subject to be painted, and so everyone paints the same thing. Believe me, Picasso and Renoir have nothing to worry about us. I will never be an award-winning artist. My first attempt was a big pineapple, and yes, it did look like a big pineapple, with black and white stripes on the canvas behind the pineapple. At the art class in November, the subject was a large, huge turkey in honor of Thanksgiving. The teacher told us to draw a large bowling pin. The top was to be the turkey's head, the bottom was to be the body. Feet were added, mine were added backwards, I don't know why. A face was painted on, and the feathers, mine were brown, red, blue, and green. During the class, the students discussed whether or not turkeys could fly. Most people did not really know, and we decided no, turkeys cannot fly. The class ended and I gathered all my belongings, and my painting was not quite dry yet. My purse, I gathered my purse, my tote bag, and my newly painted canvas. When I reached my car, my hands were full, and I placed my masterpiece canvas on top of my car. Unlocked the door, put my belongings on the passenger seat, got in, fastened the seat belt, put the car in drive, and took off. And guess what? As I turned right into Main Street, the turkey flew off the top.
Oh, gee.
It flew away, I do not know where, proving that turkeys do fly. I don't know where it landed, but I hope whoever finds it will take good care of my turkey painting. When I return to the next class, I will report that yes, turkeys can fly. Who knows? Maybe my artwork will end up in the Metropolitan Museum. Artist unknown worth $2 million. But I doubt it. Now the new one that I wrote is called Repeat Performance. Yes, I did it again. You would think I would learn, but no. Last Monday, I attended another art class. This time the subject was a beach scene with 2 tall palm trees. Sky, water, and the sun reflected, shining on the water. The trunks of the palm trees came out much too skinny. But oh well, that's my artist's lack of experience. My painting was dry and the class ended. I picked up my belongings and walked to my car. After fumbling through my purse, I finally found my car key. Of course, I had to unburden my hands. So I placed my masterpiece, you guessed it, on top of it. Got in the car and drove home. After I got the car in the garage, I gathered everything up. But where was my painting? Then the light bulb went off in my head. I had done it again. I drove back to the senior center and looked in the parking lot where I had been parked, but there was nothing on the ground. I turned around facing out towards Main Street, and guess what? There was my palm tree masterpiece laying in the middle of Main Street. This old lady with a cane walked to the curb, and the cars kept coming from the left down Main Street. 4, 5, 6, 7, they came, non-stop. All of a sudden the car stopped with 5 cars behind him. I crossed into the busy street, picked up my picture, and thanked the kind driver. All the while, all the cars behind him were blowing their horns. The picture was slightly scarred and dented. which made it look a little antiqued. I hope I have learned not to leave my belongings on the top of my car. Twice was too much.
Thanks for being here, Peter. Pam Cleary. I hear you got a good one today.
I don't know who told you that.
Georgie.
Like Deb, I never know what I'm going to be doing until I get here.
You got it.
I think I got it. But this morning, this guy woke me up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I've been carrying it around for a few months now because I never know what I'm going to be doing, so I figured it was trying to tell me something. It's actually a poem about a flower, and I first saw this flower when I was 50 some odd years old, hiking in the woods. I had never seen it before except in photographs and pictures and books. And I approached it trying to figure out what the heck it was, and the closer I got, well, I'm not going to tell you that story yet. Oh. I'm going to read the poem first, because when I found out what it was and I looked it up, I wanted to know more about it, and I learned a lot about it. I put that in a poem. But the reason I did it was because what happened, and the reason I saw the thing in the first place, it kind of hit me. I'll explain it all later. The poem is called Pink Lady Slipper, and it contains a lot of information about a pink lady slipper, the research that I did. It also kind of describes some people, and maybe you'll get the drift. She doesn't like to be disturbed. So much relies on patience, persistence, the perfect conditions. Seemingly rare, she's more common than you think. Native and wild, hiding in plain sight in the weak light on the forest floor. Particular, but enduring. She knows what she lacks, pursuing it with patience and diligence. Soaking up the timid rays, penetrating to the canopy where she resides. She may wait years for what she needs to flower. Offering no reward to pollinating bees, she takes what they proffer, then packs her bags lightly, setting her progeny free in the breeze, hoping some friendly fungus will fulfill their needs. Beautiful and lush, but also touchy and rash. You should handle her with kid gloves, if you handle her at all. I was kind of fascinated by this flower, and like I say, there's a story attached to it. I happened to be hiking that day, and of course it was May, because that's when they bloom. It was like somewhere between Mother's Day and Father's Day, and I was feeling kind of down, and I'm wandering the woods, and I'm talking to both my parents, who are long dead. And at some point I say to them, "Are you even listening to me?" And right then I'm walking across this bridge, and I look down, and there's this whole stone display. Right? There are stones all across the brook, and dozens of turtles lounging in the sun. Okay, Dad, I know you're listening. For some reason, turtles in my childhood I associated with my dad. That's another story. I won't go into it. But I kept on walking, and in my mind I'm saying, okay, Dad's listening, but where are you, Mom? My mom always liked roses, and I'm saying to myself, I am not going to find any red roses growing in the woods. I'm not going to find any tomatoes or cucumbers, which I know would tell me that you were listening. I am not going to find a damn thing in these woods that tell me that you're paying attention right now. I can't imagine what you would even think of showing me. And then I stumble upon these flowers. And at first I didn't know what they were. And I walked closer and closer, and I did eventually discover that they were the pink lady slippers that I wrote about. And it made me laugh out loud, because when I was a kid, my mother only ever wore pink slippers. It just hit me, and I was like, okay, I guess you're both listening. But I carried that around for months, and now I read it for you, Mom. I did bring another one. I'm going to lighten the mood a little bit, I hope. From the time we're very young, we're all subject to criticism. You get it first from your own parents. You know, if only you didn't have your father's ears or your uncle's nose or your mother's cheeks. Next, your siblings, your friends, everybody gets into the act. You get called things like dog breath, butthead, ferret face, snot nose, four eyes. And then the media gets in on the game. TV, radio, magazines, they're all bombarding us with messages about how we need to be taller, thinner, smoother, sleeker, tanned, buff, sweet smelling, straight teeth, fresh breath, dandruff-free hair, long, thick lashes, no freckles, no zits, no visible panty lines. And it doesn't stop there. They beat us up for having cellulite, age spots, varicose veins, wrinkles, gray hair, thin hair, no hair. Is it any wonder that we're lacking sometimes in self-confidence? But at times we're our own worst enemy. So I wrote this poem. It's called Cease and Desist, to tell us we really need to stop beating ourselves up. Cease and desist. It's not as if you don't know better. What could you be thinking? You wouldn't treat your best friend, acquaintance, perfect stranger so dirty, rotten, stinking. Focused always on the flaws, finding fault, name-calling, criticizing, griping, grousing, bitching, moaning, caterwauling. Have you nothing nice to say? Would I listen anyway? Shut your trap, cease and desist. Now you've got me really pissed. You're nothing but a nasty sneerer. Guess I'll try another mirror.
Sandie Tarbox.
This is too good not to share. I asked a friend who had crossed into the 70s and is heading towards 80 what sort of changes he is feeling in himself. He sent me the following. After loving my parents, my siblings, my spouse, my children, and my friends, I have now started loving myself. I have realized I am not Atlas. The world doesn't rest on my shoulders. I have stopped bargaining with vegetable and fruit vendors. A few pennies more is not going to break me, and it might help the poor fellow save for his daughter's school fees. I leave my waitress a big tip. The extra money brings a smile to her face. She's toiling much harder for a living than I am. I stopped telling the elderly that they're too old and have told too many stories too many times. The stories make them walk down memory lane and relive their past. I have learned not to correct people even when I know they are wrong. The onus of making everyone perfect is not on me. Peace is more precious than perfection. I give compliments freely and generously. Compliments are a mood enhancer, not only for the recipients, but also for me. And a small tip of a recipient of a compliment, never turn it down. Just say thank you. I have learned not to bother about the creases or the spots on my shirt. Personality speaks louder than appearance. I walk away from people who don't value me. They might not know my worth, but I do. I remain cool when someone plays dirty to outrun me in the rat race. I am not a rat, and neither am I in a rat race. I am learning not to be embarrassed by my emotions. It's my emotions that make me human. I have learned that it's better to drop the ego than to break the relationship. My ego will keep me aloof, whereas my relationship, I will never be alone. I have learned to live each day as if it's my last. After all, it might be my last. I am doing what makes me happy. I am responsible for my happiness, and I owe it to myself. Happiness is a choice. Why do we have to wait to be older? Why can't we practice this at any stage of our life? You can be happy at any time. Just choose to be.
And we have very here in front of me, Claudia Fox.
I just
Claudia, show them the front of your cover.
I'll pass it around, but okay. I took a sailing trip. My very first sailing trip, I was 33. That's 45 years ago. God, it's hard to believe. And we went through the Caribbean. I saved this because it was quite an event, and I passed it around. So I thought I would share. I went to the sailing meeting and got the idea to share some of my experiences on this trip. If you were here the last time, you heard me share that I had a huge lesson from skiing. And after having that lesson, I was ready for anything. So I got a call from my girlfriend who had moved we were living in New York City, and she had moved to Michigan. And she said to me, I bought a sailboat. How would you like to go on a 6-week sailboat trip? Now, this happened to coincide with me leaving a job. It was in May, and it wasn't starting a new one until September. So I had time. And I was hesitant, as I always am with new ventures, but I said yes. So she said, the boat's being trailered to St. Thomas. We'll meet in St. Thomas. So we did. I knew nothing about sailing. The most experience I had growing up was that my father's brother, my Uncle Bob, had a boat, and it was in Lake Erie, and we used to jump off and then climb up the ladder and jump off again. That was my boating experience. So I said to her, Kathy, I have never sailed. I don't know how to. Oh, I'll teach you. No big deal. Really, it's so simple. So we go down, and it's a really beautiful 28-foot sailboat. And she said, we're going to go first to Martinique because Club Med has a big July 4th celebration. It had taken us a little bit to get this all arranged. So we started out. Now, we're loading up the boat, you know, bringing little suitcases and things. And I said to her, oh, what do we do about food? Oh, don't worry about food. No. She starts bringing on cases of wine. Okay, that should have been my first clue of how this trip was going to go. So we're you know, we start sailing, and she's saying, do this, do that, do this, do that. And then I turned around, and I saw that the dinghy had overturned and somehow gotten loose. So, what do I know? I said, I'll get it. So I jump in, and she's yelling, no, there's sharks in the water. Don't do this. But by that time, I got the dinghy, brought it back, you know, we got it detached. She turned around the motor, and I got my first reprimand. No, you can't do that. Okay. So we go down, we get to Martinique. It's a festive time, and you can see the red, white, and blue colors, and all the people, and talk about drinking. Well, everybody was drunk all the time. I don't drink because my dad was an alcoholic. So I'm in a program called Al-Anon, and I just don't drink. Not to say I didn't at one point, but that's another story, when I first came to New York City. but I was encouraged to stop by my roommates, so I did. Anyway, everybody's drunk and all over the place. So we go and play tennis. And there's this guy, he keeps coming over to the tennis courts, and he says to me, there's scooters here. You want to go for a scooter ride? And I'm thinking, no. I said, no. So the third day, Kathy said, just go already. This guy's driving us nuts. So I said, okay. So we went to the scooter, and I said, where's the helmet? No, we don't need a helmet. I said, I need a helmet. Get me a helmet. So he got me a helmet. Now, the way Club Med is situated in Martinique, it's on a hill, and there's a huge winding drive that goes down to the bottom. And as I soon found out, there's a big brick wall at the end of it, right? So I get on the back of the scooter, and I said, do you know what you're doing? Yes, I know. Okay, so we get on, and we promptly, I'm telling you, it took like 1 minute to fly down that road and run into the brick wall. I mean, he was airlifted to a hospital. He was in bad shape. He broke his neck, and he was taken back to California, where he was from. I, thank you God, only bruised my leg, but was purple from my knee to my thigh. I could still walk, but it looked just awful. So I had my war wound. It's actually kind of fun to, not be in pain, but talk about this experience. So, one of the things I learned in the sailing world is that people, they just hop on other people's sailboats and stay with them for a week or two. It's no big deal. Come sailing with us. So we met this young woman, Anna. And Kathy said, yeah, join us. Come, we're going to go to the next island. We went from St. Thomas, Martinique, St. Lucia, Barbados, and St. Vincent.
Wow.
That's something.
But we only took her for one stretch. So while we're out, and she said, I need more help than you could give me. I'm doing everything with the sailing. So, yeah, okay. So we go out, there's a huge storm. I mean, Kathy says, go below. Anna and I will take care of it. I said, I don't think you're supposed to go below when it's tumultuous like that. I mean, it seems to me I'm going to get sick to my stomach. No, just go down there. So I went down and promptly threw up. I came back up and practically tethered myself to the boat so I wouldn't get lost at sea, and we weathered the storm. How's my time? Because
you're doing fine.
Two more minutes.
Oh, goodness gracious. Okay. Well, I will say we were approached by a lot of the island guys. Want some reefer? No, Kathy, no. What are we doing out here? She said, just pretend like I have a gun. Okay, so she handled all of the guys that rode up in a boat. The other thing that happened was we would go to these islands, and she was full of wine. So we went to all the native dances, and she's out there, dancing away. I was frozen in my tracks. I mean, a Midwest girl who moved to New York City, and I didn't know what was happening. At one point, I begged her to take me to an airport. So the final return, we went back to St. Thomas, and then I came back to New York City. I will say I loved Kathy, but we didn't really talk too much after that trip. She kind of went by the wayside. And it was really, really tough to re-enter New York City. The pavement was hot, the sun was beating down, and I felt like people were like running up and down the sidewalks because I was in such slow motion to the trip. So it took me quite a while to acclimate back. But it was, let's say this, a trip I'll never forget.
What a story. I must share with you. Yes, we spent a lot of time sailing different places, but our boat had a home. Actually, we lived in Chatham on Cape Cod, and we had a mooring in Stage Harbor for our boat when we happened to be in the U.S., and we were a fair amount of the time. You couldn't really have a dock there, and it's a little hard on the Cape sometimes. Chatham is on the elbow. If you think of the Cape as an arm, here's Chatham, Massachusetts, right on this elbow. Now, we started feeling sorry for the people who came to visit Chatham, Massachusetts, because there were no boats that would take them out, and Chatham's surrounded by ocean. We thought this was dumb. So we told a friend of ours, who was concierge at Chatham Bars Inn, that we'd be willing to take up to 6 people at a time out in Nantucket Sound and just take them for a sail. Could be less number, could be just 6, but about 6 was about right. We had our 42-footer sailboat, Long Voyager, and I want to tell you one of the most fun stories. One Friday, I got a phone call from a young man, and he said, "May I have a sail on your boat with a friend on Sunday afternoon?" And I said, "Golly, I'm sorry. We actually are taking folks out right now on Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, and Sunday evening." And he said, "But I need the boat. I have the girl. I have the ring. I need the boat." And it turns out he was going to a family reunion on Martha's Vineyard on Monday and wanted to go engaged. We felt terrible in telling him no. So we were taking the people out on Sunday evening for a sunset. That wouldn't take us that long. And then we'd be in. It was going to be a full moon evening with stars. And we said, "How do you feel about the full moon and stars?" And he said, "Well, sounds good to me." We said, "I'll tell you what, take your love out to dinner. Don't tell her what you're going to do after dinner. Meet us at the dock." This dock in Chatham we could just bring our boat into and have them come on the boat. She's still on her heels and her dress from going out to dinner. She had no idea what they were going to do. And they do board. And it was a lovely, quiet evening, not much wind, just a beautiful evening. And we went out of Stage Harbor in Chatham, out in where there's a big buoy out there. We call it our bush buoy, because years ago it was where all of the fishermen tied their Christmas trees together after Christmas as a buoy to find your way back in the channel. Now there's a big Coast Guard buoy there. Well, we went out by the buoy, and we had told the young couple, who were adorable, to go on up to our bow, and just there was a nice place to sit up there and look at the moon and look at the stars. And when we felt confident that there weren't any other boats around us or no danger anywhere, we put our boat on autohelm, so we didn't have to steer it. We went below, so we weren't really in sight. So he had a little privacy, you know. And pretty soon we heard her go, and we came up, and she said, "Look." And she immediately had to call her mother, of course. Well, it was so cute. We did have plenty of electric on our boat to turn all the lights on so she could go below and see her ring in the light. And then she called her mama, and we took them back in, and we were sure that they were married happily ever after. That's one of our favorite things. Well, we thank you all for being here today. We just are so delighted always to be with you. Have a wonderful time till we see you again.
Next meeting will be
August
5th.
Is it 5th?
August 5th. And please, we'll leave the sign-up sheet over here. Those that didn't sign it, we'd just like to know who came and whatever.
Right, and you know, you can always speak or not. And Peter, we loved having you with us. Thank you for coming. Linda? Thank you. Okay.